So yes, welcome everybody to our webinar and today we're going to cover how to manage remote teams effectively, the best practices, the common challenges that you can run into while working remotely. Myself and Andrew Chestnut will be leading the webinar today. Let's see. So yeah, at the end we'll have a time for Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, just feel free to paste them in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. If Zoom freezes, apologies in advance. So hopefully everything goes smoothly on the call today. Yeah, fingers crossed. So a little bit about us. So my name is Lena Levine. I'm founder and CEO of Forcoda, and we're UX UI design web and mobile development studio. We've been in business for 6 years, and so right now we have 3 different offices. We have Buffalo office, we have smaller office in Arizona, and we also have people working from St. Petersburg, Russia. So for the last 6 years, I've been growing and managing remote teams. And, when I started working with, the people in different time zones, people working remotely, I quickly, came across different challenges that start arising from not being in the same room. And from the very beginning, very early on, having proper processes in place, having proper communication was my #1 priority with my business, to make sure that the work that we deliver, the projects that we work on, the quality does not suffer, to make sure that results were predictable, that they were top-notch, and to make sure that people that we work with, the developers, designers, clients, everybody stay happy, and there is no stress, because that's like one of the things. Working remotely can be stressful sometimes, just because of the different gaps in the communication or processes that start happening. And with being 100% remote, it's I found it to be very honest environment, because if you have any gaps in your operations or the company processes, they quickly they start amplifying. And if you overlooked something, before that, potentially you weren't noticing because you were working from the same office space, and it's so quickly just to lean over your coworker's desk, and just be like, "Hey Joe, what do you think of this?" Or just stop by the computer right at the table and just take a look at the bug or project you're working on and just do the quick brainstorm. So when you're not in the same room, those little moments disappear, and we don't always realize that they played actually a really crucial role in your overall productivity. So when you work remotely, you quickly start noticing what's not working, and you need to address it fast. Otherwise, it's just going to turn in this whole disaster, and your team will be stressed out, you will be stressed out as the manager, and you're not going to get anything done, and it's just going to be overall disaster. So over 6 years, I built put in place and implemented a lot of best practices on the projects, on the communication, on our internal team communications, and that's what I'd like to share today with you, and hope that you can take it back to your teams and implement it, and it will help you to improve your processes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Lena. And so for me, my name is Andrew Chestnut. I've been in business for myself for about 4 years. I'm the CEO of Nickel City Learning Solutions. So I've done that for about 4 years. I've been in my career for about 15, and I've been a remote worker for almost all of that 15 years. So I've been on both ends of the board, where I have a completely remote team now, and I also have been part of a completely remote team. I had a running joke when I first got a remote position. I didn't meet my boss in person until we had been working together for 4 years. So it was sort of interesting. So as far as my team, I have the same thing going on that Lena does. Is I have a relatively international team. I have people in Eastern Europe. I've got my main contractor is in Bali, and I have another one in Australia. So I have a smaller team. There's only about 4 of us. And I just actually picked somebody up in Rochester, which is near us. So it's sort of, time zones are always a thing. Lena was saying about she has some in St. Petersburg. we're both working with about a 12-hour time difference total. So for me, Bali's 12 hours ahead of us. It's currently 3 a.m. there. So there's a whole nother kind of line of issues. But with a remote workforce, I've found, and I've trained a number of trainers, and a lot of them had to do virtual training. When you're working virtually, there's a really different mindset about how you have to go about it. Lena and I were talking about, even difficulty with Zoom. When you're speaking with somebody, it's a lot easier to speak with somebody if you're in person. If you're not, there's, Zoom will cut off, or you can't quite hear somebody, or it's just a completely different style. And so thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate it. I know that a lot of you folks are really going to be in a situation where you now have to manage a remote team, and it's like, okay, great, now what? I'm stuck with this, and it is a huge transition. So hats off to all of you who are going through that. You will get through it. It does get easier. And I'm hoping that this webinar, at the end of the webinar today, we're going to get you into a place where you feel a lot more secure with what you're doing, and it will really help you. Absolutely. We got a special offer for you at the end of it too, if you ever want our help. So yeah. Working Remotely 101. It sounds like a great title, doesn't it? I like that. I think it's perfect.
I work hard on it.
So yeah, so as far as working remotely, I mean, we wanted to take you through both ends of this, because a lot of people are also transitioning into, I am now a remote worker and I might also have a remote team. So we wanted to get both ends of this. So during this first part, I'm going to go through some of the tips and tricks that I learned over almost a decade and a half of working from remotely on what to do and what to really succeed at being a remote worker. So the first thing we want to do is keep a schedule. It is so easy for people to do, oh, well, my commute went from 30 minutes into the city and good traffic to now it's like 5 minutes. I roll over and go a door over and I'm good. A lot of people get into this, I can work in my jammies, which is fun. I mean, it really is. I'm not going to lie. I call it freelance or casual. You're dressed from the waist up. So there's a huge draw to, all these great things I can do. To be honest, they actually end up really hurting you in the long run. So they're good for a little while, but they're really going to end up hurting you in the long run. Quick story on this. I had a boss's boss of mine years ago who started working from home. And this is like, she put type A's to shame. I mean, she really was very successful, did, really good at her job. And she messaged, I was talking with her one day about our transition to virtual. And she's like, I haven't gotten anywhere near as much as I wanted to get done in the past 3 days. And my husband is threatening to divorce me if I don't shower. And I have been in the same pajamas. So even for very successful people, this is a transition. Keeping a schedule is a big thing. Get up at the same time you did to go to work. If you want to say, okay, I don't have a 30-minute commute, I can sleep in for 30 minutes, that's fine. Just keep to that schedule, take a shower every morning, get yourself dressed, do exactly the same things you would do if you were in the office. So that's the first one. And number two, I'm sorry.
Totally agree on that one.
So number two, get dressed. So I've already kind of hit on that one and what it is. It gives you a certain mindset. Every person that I have seen who successfully navigated working from home, even for extended periods of time, has always gotten dressed. You don't always have to show up in a suit and tie. If that's your line of work, if you're a financial advisor, I'd strongly recommend it. You'll look good. But honestly, get dressed, treat this like a job, and you'll get yourself into that mindset of treating it like a job, right? And that you have to go to work. There's something about that. That's why a lot of companies have dress codes. They do that because there's a mental factor to it. I'm going somewhere special. I'm not just going to the store in my jammies.
Yeah. And to add to the point number one, I personally try to keep the same schedule in terms of waking up and going to sleep even on the weekend. Just helps to keep it consistent, so that way I don't have to wake up at 6 during the weekday and then like sleep in on the weekend, and then it's just now Sunday night and Monday morning sucks. So it makes me a very boring social person because my bedtime is now 10 p.m. but makes me very productive and organized. So
very true, right? I'm finding that the older I get, though, the more acceptable a 10 o'clock bedtime is. Really.
Yes.
Oh yeah, especially with my friends with kids. Oh yes, very much. And so those are the two big ones. Third one, have a dedicated space. Make sure that you have a place that you eat, a place that you relax, a place that you work. There's a huge tendency to say, oh, I can just work from my couch. Well, that's wonderful. And working from your couch is probably more comfortable. And if that's your space, that's your space. But make sure that you have the separation. Normally, when you go into an office, you've got to commute. Most people's commutes around 30 minutes, at least in Buffalo, one way. So you have 1 hour of your day that you can use to either ramp up for your day or decompress. So when you leave that office, you know, this is my time to go back home again. And this is my time to turn off the office and go back home. So there's that dividing line that you have. You don't get that when you work from home. And you have to be much stricter with yourself. And it kind of goes back to keeping a schedule, and all three of these are kind of in the same mindset of you have to treat work a little bit differently, and you have to make that cutoff. Like for me, I don't work after a certain time every day. I will not do any work. And then before, there's a window, and that's me, that's my time. I tell my clients I'm available from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's my standard availability. If I'm available a little out of that, that's fine, but that's the expectation. And so setting the expectation for yourself is also really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So, all right. So yeah, those, so these three pillars really apply to anyone working from home, right? Doesn't matter if you're a manager, if you're part of the larger team. It's just kind of the key principles that help to keep us, sane and organized throughout the day, especially now that we really, 24/7 inside the house. So now more than ever, this is a really important point to just to get a refresher on. So, so from here, we want to kind of move towards and talk about what it takes to effectively manage the remote team. So I've been having a lot of conversations with my clients for the last couple of weeks, the companies that were traditionally in the same space. Right now, they're all working remotely, regardless where they, tech, like savvy teams, or just any other business, like more traditional businesses. Even tech teams are struggling to be 100% remote, just because when you don't see your coworkers, when you're not in the same room, you start missing those key interactions, right? And there are more barriers to communicate. There are more opportunities to under communicate something or not communicate it in the right way. So it's just, people might find themselves also trying to get used to this new environment. So there are a lot of different factors at play. So we want to make sure that we, bring the team together in a way that everybody can produce their best work. So, the quality is not suffering, and, make sure that everybody also on the same page and know, kind of like understand what's going on. So the first concept that I want to talk about is really, doubling down on your communication with your team. It's better to over communicate something than under communicate. So when I started working with remote, contractors, remote designers and developers, I quickly found out that the communication was the #1 friction point in our processes and on the project. So whether it's, me not communicating my expectations clearly, or even just or developer not maybe understanding what was expected, and doing their own thing, spending so many hours doing something, and then us looking at the final result like, what happened here, right? So we want to avoid those mistakes. So that's why I quickly realized, okay, I gotta take care of it to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then some of the approaches that helped me out to avoid those stressful moments between the team members were really, hey, if I need to explain something multiple times, or just like even talk through with somebody to make sure that they, understand what I'm expecting from this project, or what the client expectations from the project, help to make sure that the other person is understanding what what we're talking about here, and even like have them to kind of like repeat it back to me to make sure that they understood it correctly. So also having a backup plan besides verbal communication, being able to create maybe like assign a task in the project management software, whether it's like we're using Asana for our process checklist, we use Jira for tickets and assignments to keep track of the overall project process. So make sure that you also have a written form of the task of the project, so the person that you're working with, in case you're not available, you're offline, or, you know, again, if we're dealing with the different time zones, they can always take a look at that written task and just get a refresher of what needs to be done, right? We're not robots. We can't, you know, remember everything. So I want to make sure that there is some sort of, you know, original source of the information that we can rely on and reference moving forward. So, and then, yeah, I mean, again, if, you know, if you can have, you know, it's always better to have, I mean, so having in-person communication, right? It's obviously the best, the most high quality form of the communication. But if we can't be in the same room in person, the next best option would be to have a video call. Again, to make sure that we can at least read some of those nonverbal cues of the other person, because also what happens when you're working with somebody remotely, right? You don't always know what's going on, you know, in their life. They might be dealing with some family issues or, you know, health issues, some other, you know, stress. And if you don't know what's going on in their life, you can't properly, you know, react and assess the situation or even emphasize with that person. So just, you know, making sure that having those, like being able to check in with them and like even start the conversation by, you know, exchanging a few kind of like, you know, casual, you know, check-in questions. You make sure everybody, you know, everyone is doing okay, and you know what's happening in their life. So to make sure that you can also properly, you know, assess situation as a manager, and make sure that your team, or, you know, people on your team individually doing well.
And I have to actually kind of chime in for a little bit about video conferencing. I know a lot of people, when you first start working remotely, you don't want to see this, or they don't want to see a video, or they want to turn it off. It's actually something that is a really good thing to do, is to have your video on, to see somebody's face. It gets a human connection. I know there are literally, I have a contractor who I have never met in person, ever. And so I was still, you know, because we have video conferences, because we talk about stuff like this, because we use what Lena was saying, it was funny. She just had her first child last Monday, and I could be a part of that. And so it's like we're old friends. We've run into friends in this. We've never physically met each other, and that's kind of the reality of this virtual, the virtual world we work in, right? So yeah, communication's a huge thing. Funny story about that, actually, just a really quick one. I have a voiceover artist in Denver that I work with. Also somebody I've never actually met in person. So one day I called him about some billing or something, and I realized on the phone he had never heard my voice ever, because we had always worked via some other thing. We usually worked via email generally, because we would usually hop on to. He had 3 little kids in another company, so he really wouldn't. You know, it was an interesting experience. But it's things that you're going to have to really realize. Communication's a huge deal. I've made sure he heard my voice a number of times after that, because it was something I didn't realize. A couple of tricks that I've come across over my experience doing this, that you would never think about if you're not used to working virtually.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, all right. So the next one that we have is another best practice that we using internally is doing a daily team stand-ups or check-ins. So it depends how, you know, different companies call it. So daily stand-up, you can do it either over the call or even in a messenger. So we're using Slack. So, you know, people, because since our team is spread through so many different time zones, some of the people just post the updates in a Slack channel. And typically during the stand-up call, everybody shares or answers the same 3 questions: what they've done yesterday, what they're working on today, and if they have anything that's blocking them from, you know, working on their tasks today. So it's a great way to just like get a quick bird's eye view of everything that's happening in your company, what's everyone is working on, if anyone needs help. And you know, that way you can kind of like properly plan out your, you know, plan for the day, and make sure that your team members are supported and you have everything that you know, that they need to move forward with their tasks. Again, it's much easier to talk it through versus trying to guess or just nudge them. Hey, what are you working on? Can you give me an update, right? So that way everybody gets together, and it again also helps to build that you know, feeling of being a part of the team, especially when everybody allocated in different places. And another, what we recently started doing is doing the end of the day updates. So everyone just post a quick update in the Slack saying, hey, this is what I've been working on today. And it also, it helps me as the kind of you know, manager of the company, of the team, right, to see what everyone was working on, since I'm not you know, on a lot of projects I'm not hands-on involved with those day-to-day, you know, small tasks. So it helps me to see what everyone was working on, just get an idea. Okay, we're moving, everything is moving forward, you know, I see the progress. So it just helps me to I don't have to respond to those updates every day, but it just gives me this internal feeling of confidence. You know, everything is going well, I see, you know, what's happening here and there and there. So now I can, you know, if I need to jump on or like address anything that like any issue that maybe came up, I can do it, but I don't have to be, you know, in a like day-to-day project, you know, projects tasks. So. Andrew?
I'm good. I have another point I'm going to put up a little bit earlier about daily stand-ups, but yeah, I do it via Slack. So that's kind of my thing. So, and again, when you're working with a team with a 12-hour time difference, it can be really difficult. So I usually do, at the end of the night, I'll check in with my folks overseas just to make sure that everything's going well. So that's usually what I do it, but yeah.
So it's also extremely important to have processes or right processes in place. So also very early on, I started documenting all the different processes that we follow on our projects. So my background, I was a web developer myself for many years. So once I started growing my business and growing my team, I had certain best practices or certain approaches that I wanted to communicate to them. And, you know, I quickly realized, right, all of us have different ways how we do things. And that also was, you know, I started noticing that became one of the pain points for working with other people. So I wanted to make sure that we eliminate that pain point. And the best way was to, you know, to transfer my knowledge to my team by documenting everything, or like all the steps that I'm following on, you know, design processes, branding processes, web development processes. So, and that turned into this like running checklist for different projects. So right now we're using Asana to keep track of those checklists, and those, you know, for all the different types of the projects that we have internally, we have a proper process and a checklist in place. So that way it helped to solve so many problems. And I'm just a huge fan of checklists. You know, it makes it, first of all, it makes it transparent for your team. You know, the expectations become clear, what needs to be done, in what order. This makes the project results predictable. And regardless how small or large project that you're working on, you know, it helps you to make sure that the end result is high quality, right? That it's predictable. And that's what's very important when, again, everybody are, you know, located differently. You want to make sure that they understand, everybody on the same page, and they understand what's expected of them. What is the next step in the project, right? Because you don't want to, you know, the other person might not be available to answer your question. You can always go back into you know, the project management software or the documentation that you might have, and just kind of like see, okay, here's what I need to be working on next. So, and it also helps to just like assign the tasks to people on the team much easier. And, everybody knows what they're working on and what's expected of them. So it also helps to onboard new members of the team. So when, whenever a new developer or designer joins my team, it definitely, now I can just share those documents with them. And, it makes the onboarding process so much smoother. So yes, big fan.
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest things that I've seen so many clients do wrong is just saying, oh no, I've got to get up and go and get everything remote and do all of this stuff now, and with a sense of urgency, and they completely forget about processes, which are so much more important in a virtual world, so much more important in a virtual world.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, even if you are working in an office with bad processes, nothing works correctly. Now take and add an extra level of complexity to that with not being able to see what's going on. So it's so,
Yep.
I am a huge fan of processes, huge fan. And also as a business owner, it makes my life a whole lot easier because now I don't have to worry about it. From my employee standpoint, it makes them so much happier because they know exactly what's expected of them. It's just much easier. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Never underestimate the happiness factor. Is just, like eliminating all these different pain points. Just like it makes working together as a team so much more enjoyable. And now you can focus on growing together as a team instead of fighting each other, like, oh, why are you doing this way, right? Why is this bug here? So it just like improves the overall quality of working together, and the final product is just can't underestimate it.
Oh, absolutely. And we all love it when our job is a hell of a lot easier.
Yes.
And a lot of these things will make it a whole lot easier, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'm going to go through a couple of other things here. Don't micromanage. I have seen so many people do this. What happens is if you're used to being around your team and then that team isn't there anymore physically, a lot of people get this need to then micromanage. They feel like they've lost control over their team. They feel like they're not in the know. They feel like they don't know what's going on, and they will micromanage everyone. Micromanaging in general is the fastest way to kill your team. It really is. I've had to have kind of some stern talks with clients about micromanaging and just saying, look, you have a team of professionals. They know what they're doing. This also goes back to daily stand-ups that will help with this a lot, and double down on communication. So those two things will help this don't micromanage. And it helps also the leader, because you've got to take into consideration as a leader, you're going to have a process of transitioning, and it's going to be difficult. Again, I'm going from an office where I can just kind of, look over my cubicle and go, hey, Joe, what's going on? That's fine. I can't do that when I'm working remotely. And so it leaves a lot of leaders just really feeling very vulnerable. And sometimes micromanaging is one of the symptoms to that. I tend to come from my management style is from you're a professional, you're an adult, you know what you're doing. here's my requirements. Here's my expectations of you. Go do it. It lets people feel valued.
Definitely. And your team will definitely appreciate it, having that freedom to make their own decisions and having that autonomy to make their own decisions based on their expertise and using their own judgment. And if you feel very super uncomfortable just like letting your team run free, you can always what I found helpful for me is I can, before I start the project or a certain task, I can just have the other person to walk me through the approach. And, I might provide some feedback and say, oh, let's try this. I think it will work better because, based on my experience, I saw it working better. But just like even talking through it, so that way what the other person is going to be, how they're going to be working on it, also helps to alleviate that anxiety of not seeing what the other person is doing.
True. And I think all of this kind of comes down to strong company culture. And to be really honest, this could be an entire webinar in and of itself, a company culture. I have done so much training on this within management. Your company culture has a huge impact on how productive your team is. I can remember years ago, it was about 2 years ago, I was at a professional organization. So my professional organization is the Association for Talent Development. That's what instructional designers, that's our main thing. And so I was going to hear a talk by Ken Blanchard's son, and I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. I'm really embarrassed. I don't remember his name. And the reason I don't remember his name though is that, so we're sitting there, there's about 200 of us in a room. And then walks Ken Blanchard. Now, those that don't know Ken Blanchard, he wrote The 1 Minute Manager, is considered to be the world expert on management style. He has his PhD in psychology from Cornell and has spent the past 45 or 50 years with organizational behavior. So the man has a lot of credentials. And so, you know, we're there to watch his son, and Ken Blanchard walks in and he's like, I literally was called yesterday. I just flew in. I have no idea what to talk about. What are your questions? So we had this gold mine of an opportunity to talk to him, but you got to hear a little bit about his management style and his company, the Ken Blanchard companies. And these are multi-million-dollar companies. And his thing is just like what Lena was talking about earlier, where sometimes it's just checking in how somebody is. How's your kid? You know, how are you doing? Oh, I heard your mom was sick. How's she? You know, not too personal, but I mean, to the extent that you keep people comfortable. Everyone's not going to want to have the same sharing level that somebody else might, but being interested in your staff, in your team. They send emails out like once a week with what everyone's been doing and kind of what you did over the weekend and just little stuff. Some people forget about that. And especially if you have a remote team, isolation is a huge issue. It's funny. So I actually have, besides like my Slack groups and everything that I have for my work, I actually have a group WhatsApp group that I message in just simply because it's like, there's times when I just need to chat and it's like me and my cat, and my cat's great. He doesn't really have a whole lot of things to say, but except when I need to feed him, that's a whole nother story. So anyway, social isolation is a huge thing. Making sure that your team feels like they're part of a team still is a huge part of the virtual workforce as well. So strong company culture, making sure you have a company culture that respects the people that are around, making sure that people feel like they are part of something, making sure that they are engaged, making sure that they're passionate about what they're doing, is a huge part of working as managing a remote team effectively. That's a big deal. And a lot of people overlook it because they think, oh, that's just kind of fluffy. It really does have a huge impact.
Yeah. I love the idea of sending like a newsletter summary with little bits of updates on everybody. I might steal that idea from you, Andrew.
Absolutely. We're stealing it from Ken, so I can
from Ken.
Yeah, he'll send it around like somebody ran their first 5K. Congratulations, stuff like that. Just little things that kind of connect everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what we also been recently doing. So traditionally, if you're working in the same office, right, people bond around some shared in-person activities. Maybe there is a free food in the kitchen, or people going bowling, right? So now that is non-existent. You can hang out in your own kitchen, right? But
absolutely, it's not quite the same, but
and bond with your cat, right? But
exactly right.
So we've been doing, like hosting virtual happy hours, hosting virtual game nights over, Zoom, and like doing like a screen share of the like virtual game. So that was a huge success. And even just like having the, putting the time on the calendar for people to join the, casual conversation and just kind of, like hang out and like, have fun, talk about like non-work related topics. So yeah. And another thing that I was doing, but is giving sharing the appreciation for team members. Just like at the end of the week, like doing a quick post in a Slack saying, hey, like this person done a great job because they, like were working at the time, they had a tight deadline, they launched the project on time, they done an awesome job. This person created this beautiful design, right? So just like give the praise to people. So that way they also know that they all valuable people of the team, and also that, they value each other more, and it just like, elevates everybody together. So that's, very, very important.
And some managers, this is not a bad thing. It's just that it doesn't cross people's mind, and it's really important if you're virtual. They think, oh, well, people know how much I appreciate them. They probably don't. So I don't think I can't appreciate my team enough. I mean, they are an amazing group. They are wonderful. They will bend over backwards to get deadlines done. I mean, and part of that is just making sure that they feel like they're appreciated, and that they feel like they are part of a bigger team, and that I really actually care about them, and I do. And that's something and making sure that that's known is a huge deal. Yeah, keeping work fun. So I was on a webinar the other day with somebody who's going to be a coach of mine, And he was saying that he starts off all of his meetings with a joke. And so, you know, my sense of humor is legendary, and sometimes it's bad. I got the bad dad jokes going on here. So the one that I sent to him, because he was pitching, hey, could send me a joke. And I said, how do you know if a joke's a dad joke? It'll be apparent. It's really awful. I mean, my sense of humor is terrible, but honestly, really, it helps. Keeping work fun, going to games, doing various things. I'm going to be honest, he's one of the top 10 speakers in the nation. I mean, he's got a couple of companies worth a few $100 million, and they still do it on this level. You know, everyone I've seen from those really successful people from small to huge businesses do this, and keeping it fun, making sure that you're engaging, you know, and it works. You know, it works really well. So yeah, maybe the joke. I don't know. Maybe not my jokes.
Yeah, we have a separate Slack channel just for like non-work related conversations where people post like random stuff, cat memes, you know, internet jokes, whatever, interesting information. So yeah, it just like keeps it fun and light. So that way it's not just all about, you know, work, but it's good to remember to have fun. So yeah.
And one of the recommendations I'd make, so when you're doing, when you're in Slack, what I do is I invite my clients as a single member guest, and you can do this as if you're a paid Slack member. What it does is they can only see their channel, and that's it. I have a general channel that's always included in every Slack workspace, and I have all my subcontractors on there. And that's our space where we can just kind of randomly come up with stuff, you know? And so that's, you know, so it's not client facing, my client can't see it, but it's enough that I can go through and we can put various things. Like one of my contractors had a baby last week, and so we of course want the cute baby pictures because we got to get in on that action. The cute baby pictures. Her daughter's adorable, but yeah. So.
That's awesome. All right, so, and we have this bonus slide that you know, with some favorite collaboration tools that Andrew and I were using. So internally, we've been using a few different ones on a regular basis that we found work the best for us, right? It could be different for your team just because everybody have different internal processes. So you gotta kind of have a little bit trial and error sometimes to see what your team enjoys the most, right? So we've been using Slack for chat communication. We've been using Walkabout Office. So Walkabout Office is a Buffalo-based local startup, and it's super cool. So it's a virtual office where it kind of like emulates that feeling of actually being in the physical office. So what happens, you know, in the beginning of the day, every team member signs into the account, and we have this like a floor plan where, you know, I see where everybody at, right? All my, you know, teammates in their own office. And like if somebody wants to talk to me, they can, you know, just stop by in my virtual office and have a conversation via video call. So it's just like pretty much like your virtual office, or, you know, emulation of that experience. And for me, like what I enjoy the most as a somebody in the manager role is I see kind of like where everybody at, who's online, who's not online, or I see my project manager in the same office room as my developer. Okay, they're probably discussing something about the project that we're working on. So that way I still get that bird's eye view of what everybody's working on, or like where they at, are they available, are they not available, without kind of, you know, nudging them. So it just kind of adds it another layer of, you know, just keeping a peace of mind. So. And then for processes and checklists, we've been using Asana for checklists and Jira for creating different tasks and tickets on the project. So it helps to, you know, just keep the track of how many tasks we have in the pipeline. Are they, you know, being done? Who's working on them, et cetera, et cetera. It just helps to delegate the, you know, tasks and responsibilities. And then Miro is a great tool. It's an online collaboration tool, which is like combines a bunch of different tools in it, but it can be a virtual whiteboarding tool. It can be, if you're doing, you know, UX, UI design, you have like your sticker board, you can do different diagrams, user flows, charts. It's like bunch of like loaded with amazing features. And it's great for to facilitate remote collaboration. So everybody can sign in and, you know, draw, type at the same time. So almost like, you know, recreating that in-person experience, everybody contributing in a at the same time.
So Slack and Zoom are my two main ones. I even use Zoom for a lot of my training because Zoom has so much functionality. Zoom has breakout rooms, polls. I've found it to be one of the best web conferencing thing out there, and frankly, at the price point, it's GoToMeeting's lowest price is about the highest price of Zoom. So I love Zoom. I can't say enough about it, and it's actually really stable, honestly. I mean, there's always some issues with any sort of video conferencing thing, but I've not really had any significant issues with Zoom. For me, I use Airtable right now for my project management. I just kind of like Airtable because I like it to be kind of, easy to use. I am quickly outgrowing it. So I'm looking at either Asana or Monday.com as my solution providers for it. Monday.com was recommended to me by somebody else who's in my industry. And she said that she's used it. She tried another one called Basecamp. I have a couple of clients that used Basecamp. I liked the fact that Monday.com is super easy. It is really simple, but it's also very feature packed, and that's generally how I like to have my software. So yeah, Slack, Zoom, and Airtable are my best friends. So, I actually just had another friend of mine show me the other day about a company called Around. It's called around.co, and they do like little talking heads at the top of your screen. It's really like an unobtrusive version of Zoom. So you see these little floating heads. So it's in a beta right now. And so I'm kind of on the list to get into it. And I may update you guys if we have if I get some more additional information on it once I get in. But this is the sort of thing he does for a living, so it makes it easier. So he usually knows what he's talking about. But yeah, I always love trying out new tools. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So I think we
do some questions. Let's see.
Yeah,
what
let's
we've
take
got
some
down
questions
here. Let's see. We'll be able to share your documented policies and procedures or workflow docs for virtual versus face-to-face work. This one's from Mike. As far as like the documented policies that I have, they're really specific to my industry. And I think that Lena can go into a little bit more on this kind of from her end of things, but my stuff is really specific to industry. And so while I could kind of give you a structure, it would not be much better than just a couple of bullet points. The best thing I can do when you're looking for your documented policies and procedures is, if you have to do something and you look like you're going to do it on a regular basis, just throw it into Google Docs and get it in writing. Then create that as a living document that you will then kind of go through iterations of. Just keep making it better and better and better as you go through that process. It comes from the Agile movement. If anyone's used to anyone's used to Agile production, that's where this comes from. Just get it into writing. I don't care how bad it is, into writing first. And then from there, then start tweaking the process. And eventually you will come up with a finished process, but written down is better than not. So even if it's not complete. Yeah.
I mean, I agree, right? The processes, it's in policies are really, they're all individual to the companies because everybody have different projects or products that they're working on. So I wouldn't say my in-person policies any different than for my remote team. It's really I apply the same type of approach for both in-person and remote team. Yeah.
So next one, Mishur says, Lena, how do you hire workers for your office in St. Petersburg? What's the most important tips?
Good question. So I did work with the recruiting agency. So I'm originally from Russia, so I speak Russian. I was hiring remote. So this was actually a very interesting experience because actually with the people that I was hiring, I've also never met them in person, right? We had all the communications were over. I went and met them when I was traveled back home. I went and met them. But yeah, when I hired, I didn't meet them in person. All the interviews were over, Skype or Zoom, over video call. And I did work with a recruiting agency that helped me to just, send a list of the candidates that I can review. I did try to post a job on one of the a job websites, kind of like an Indeed alternative in Russia. So I didn't see a lot of success in there, but I was working with an agency, so they just, handled the flow of the candidates, which I found very helpful. And, I was able to find the, people that, were a great fit for my team. I'm very culture oriented. So for me, it was very important to find a person that's not only skilled at what they're doing, but it's also a good culture fit for our team. Like I'm very learning oriented, right? So I want to make sure that the collaboration oriented. So I want to make sure the person that would join us was a good fit, right? Because, if it's not a good fit, it can bring the whole company down. So it's been definitely an interesting process, just even like seeing the cultural differences or expectations of people in Russia. Like I left 10 years ago. I moved to the US 10 years ago, so I haven't really dealt with hiring people in Russia personally until very, very recently. It's just interesting to compare how things are being done in the US and how they're done in Russia. But let's see, what are the important tips? Oh my God, just I guess it's good to know people that can help you. So
let's see. Another word from Mike here says, can you share your agenda for weekly team check-in? To be honest, it's just, what are you working on? It's not, there's nothing super formal about these, at least for me. There's another comment we'll get to in just a second, which is answers the perfect question for it. But as far as the team check-ins, it's more, what are you working on? How far are you along? Okay, that's great. I mean, these are not long. I tend to be this meeting could have been an email type of person. So I tend to keep meetings if I have to have a meeting, I'll have one, but I really don't want it because, again, you're a professional, you know what you're doing. Just kind of keep me up to date with it. So it's more of like a one sentence, this is what I did today, and that's it.
Yeah, I just posted it in a chat. Those are the stand-up questions that we have our team to answer. So those are like standard stand-up questions.
And actually, this goes directly into a great question for Victoria, and actually a really great observation. And thank you very much, Victoria, for saying this, because it allows us to kind of elaborate on it. She says, to me, suggesting daily check-ins and also suggesting to not micromanage your team and let them run free as professionals is a direct contradiction. I think that's just more misunderstanding what we're saying as far as direct check-ins. It's just more, what are you working on? That's it. Because I can't see them all the time. It's not really micromanaging. I'm not telling them you have to do it this way. You have to do this. This is just somebody know what you did. And even if it's I just kept working on this, that's fine. It's like a one sentence check-in. So as far as she asks, can you elaborate on what you have found to be a good balance? That's the good balance is more just is everything fine? What that also does, it engages people to say if something is going wrong, they have a time that's set aside for them to say, you know what, this really sucks. I'm having some trouble here. And so I can see I can see where you're coming from as far as saying it's a contradiction. It's not that we're saying you have to do this and you have to check in with us all the time because I want to keep tabs on you. It's more just how far along you just let the team know because we can't see that. So it's a little bit, we're still allowing them to do it in their own way, in their own time. If they say, look, I'm not going to make this deadline, it's like, okay, all right. Do you need anything to make that deadline? Is there anything we can do to help you? But you're the professional, you're the adult. I bow to your professional opinion. Let's move forward. So I think that's the other side of it too. Good question. I like that.
Yeah.
It's a little challenging. I love them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Just approaching your team from the how you can help them to do their best work, how you can help elevate them, versus just why are you doing it this way, not this way, or without dictating how you have to do it exactly. Just being there as a support that they can rely on if they feel stuck or they just need to brainstorm what would be the best way to do it. So it's a fine balance.
Yes. As long as the expectation's there that we're not your parents, we're not checking in on you.
Right.
What we want to do is we just want to know where the project is. And some people have I found this with past contractors where sometimes they'll be like, I just want to do this myself. So I look like I'm competent. When they're competent, but they don't want to bother anyone. And so what this does is tells them, it gives them a trigger that says, okay, now is the time when we're going to check in. And I usually get a better reaction than if I just let them go completely free range. And then I find out the day before the major projects due that they're going to be a week backed up because something went wrong and they didn't feel like they could reach out. It sets that expectation. Yeah. Let's see. Getting some love here in the chat. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Oh, yes. Lena, love your thing. Stand-up questions. What did I do yesterday? What are my goals for today? Is there anything blocking me? Love it.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that thing. I'm actually going to steal that for you, by the way.
Please do. Yeah, and we had a question from Francisca about any virtual game suggestions. So we've been playing Jackbox games, and I just posted the link in the chat. It's it's like a party pack of different games, and like they have different versions, with different games. And just like a fun kind of like cheesy games to like, they have trivia, they have kind of like draw something type of games, just like, get people going and have fun. So like very lighthearted. Yeah.
So Kimberly B has a really timely question here. She says, as people are forced to be home working with kids, have you ever seen any best practices to discourage fear from colleges scared of kid noises? I just said this to a friend of mine in San Francisco. He he has a 7-year-old daughter. He works from home, and we were talking one day. He was saying about how she always needs the most attention when he's on a major meeting. Of course, it's just kind of how it works. And so I sent him this thing today from Tammy Duckworth, who's an author. And she goes, so today I didn't realize I was off mute and told the Democratic caucus, including a couple of presidential candidates, that, quote, "Mommy is working, honey. Please go potty and wash your hands. Then mommy will come downstairs." I think it happens to the best of us, no matter how hard you try. And to be very honest, I think that's our new normal. I'm going to be honest. And it's one of those things that a lot of companies are going to have difficulty with this. It's something that we're just going to have to handle for a bit. So as far as best practices are concerned, I don't have kids myself, so I can't really say too much to it. I've got a niece actually that is, we currently have in hiding right now, not really, but we currently have, I've had to work around her just due to no school schedule. We're dealing with this. And honestly, sometimes it's also, I think it's just going to be our new normal. I think it's going to be one of those things. We can try to mitigate this the best that we possibly can. But I don't think we'll ever be away with it. And I think that bosses, especially, I foresee this being a much more virtual workplace after the coronavirus and everything happening right now. I don't think workers are going to want to come back again. I think they're going to want to work virtually, and I think it's a lot easier. I think it's better for morale, and I think it's something that's just going to have to happen. So as far as best practices, I mean, explaining to your kids, if your kids are about 6 years old, they're smart enough to know, mommy or daddy is working, can we have I need some quiet time, this is what and that works well with my niece. I'm going to be honest, she's 7, and it works really well. Yeah, Uncle Andrew just needs some quiet time, and being upfront with them, and then having a space for them to work. So what I'll do, or what you might do, is have a place for them to actually go, okay, this is quiet time, or this is your coloring time, or this is your thing. Give them some structure with that so that you can do your thing. So that's the best I've got.
Yeah, and
I found it to work.
I posted the link in the chat for the noise canceling app, so that way it can kind of like blocks out all the background noises, so that way it can be also like an extra layer, or like one of the ways how you can, just exclude any background noises, even if you have construction going on behind your window. So that can help.
Always know where the mute button is. Always know where the mute button is.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's see. I got one more here. Do you think organizations will be able to say people must come back to work after seeing how people can work productively remotely? So this is completely my opinion. But what I think is going to happen is there are some companies that are going to say, no, you have to come back to work now, and they're going to have a worker revolt. I think remote has been the way things have been going for years. When I was in business school, getting my business degree, they were teaching contingent workforces. So this is not new. They're teaching it in business schools. It's something that's really in the front lines of things. And I think if companies start to force workers to do that, workers are not very, will not stick with a company for 30 years like they used to. I think they're going to start finding other employment. And so I think companies are going to be forced to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge draw. Like, the companies that can offer ability to work remotely is definitely going to be a huge draw for the, employees in the future, now that people tasted that, freedom of working from home. I mean, some people love it, some people hate it. I'm not saying it's going to, it works for everybody, but the people that now saying, listen, we could have been working remotely all this time, and all these meetings could have been emails, right? So yeah, those people definitely will look for those new opportunities with companies that allow working remotely.
And I think the other side of it is that, I mean, I know Lena and I both have offices outside of our home. I have one downtown. I've got one up here in the North Towns where I live. And for me, sometimes just going into an office is easier. I don't want clients coming to my house. Most of my clients are elsewhere anyway, rather not. You know, that's something for me that I sometimes just like, that space of having somewhere outside my house. So just because you have a virtual workforce does not mean they're all working from home. Some are working from co-working spaces. The co-working spaces are amazing. I have to be honest. So I'm at DIG down at the Innovation Center with Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, and I've been just the networking. I mean, that's the reason this has happened today, is because of that networking. And it's interesting to get outside of just my company. I can get to see a bunch of others.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Perfect. So one of the other things we wanted to offer to you folks is, I hope you got a lot of value out of this. We really tried to put it together to give you as much value as we possibly could. I also realized that there's a lot of people who are having a lot of difficulty going through this transition. I mean, so now within the past week, you've been stuck with shutdowns, you've been stuck with now having a virtual workforce, and now it's like, what the hell do I do? And it can be a massive transition to people, and it can be something where, you know, you're stuck. And again, we said this is probably not going to be a temporary thing. A lot of workers, once they're used to working from home, and once they're able to get into that groove, will be significantly more productive. And I don't think they're really going to want to go elsewhere. And so what Lena and I did, because we were talking about this the other day while we're developing the software, we're developing this work, we're like, why don't we teach people how to do this? Why don't we go into your company and help you transition? So what we did is we set something up for you folks. If you want to email hello@forcoda.com. Did I get that right, Lena?
I'm going to paste it in the chat, yeah.
Perfect, awesome. So if you email hello@forcoda.com, and set up a strategy session with us. What we're going to do in the strategy session is Lena and I will come up with a specific plan for your company to help you transition virtually. The other side to this as well is I will do a strategy session with you separately, because my expertise is in virtual training. And I've done that for about 15 years at this point. So I have a lot of experience in that. We'll come up with an action plan and set forth a report for you that has specific actionable results, specific actions that you can take to get the best results out of your virtual workforce. We're doing that today just at a really, really special price for you folks, and that's $2,000. And so that'll get a complete report, complete idea for what you're doing. You know, so that way then we can kind of work you through it. And if you think about it, so if you have a virtual workforce, we're tending to find that, I know, Lena, you know, chip in if you agree with me or not, but we tend to find they are significantly more effective if you do it properly. If you don't do it properly, it can actually bomb pretty quickly, and you end up with a lot of less productive workers. So really, so we are willing to do that for you again. If you want to email us at hello@forcoda.com, and we can set that all up, give you the specifics of it, and let us know. Yeah. Cool. So let's see, it looks like we're all through all of our questions here, but yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much for the love. I really appreciate it. So it looks like we're at the top of the hour. So we're just about, we're just at the top of our hour here. So, but thank you guys so much for coming and staying through this. I noticed that just about everyone stayed through to the end, and I really appreciate that a lot. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for the love that you're giving us in the chat box. We hope you guys do well in your transition to the virtual workforce, and have a great rest of your day, and enjoy this this beautiful weekend, hopefully. Yeah, awesome.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great weekend.